Hare Krishna. Yes. So we would like to welcome His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj. Giriraj Maharaj and Guru Maharaj spent several years working together, serving Srila Prabhupada, and they have a lot of memories together. So we would request Maharaj to please share the memories on this occasion. Thank you, Maharaj, for agreeing to come on Zoom and spend time with us. Hare Krishna.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanivadi Paschatya Deshatarine Panchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So one of Sripad Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaja's most prominent qualities was his deep love for Srila Prabhupada. Very soon after Maharaj met Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada included him in his personal staff and made him his secretary for Bengali and Hindi correspondence. Soon thereafter, Srila Prabhupada gave him first and second initiation and then sannyas. And Maharaj personally served Srila Prabhupada throughout Prabhupada's last days. His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami was also devoted to ISKCON. He always considered ISKCON to be a unique creation of Srila Prabhupada's and always wanted to serve ISKCON. Both the devotees in ISKCON and ISKCON as an entity, a manifestation of Srila Prabhupada. He was really in the mood of service to the devotees, especially the devotees of ISKCON, and to ISKCON itself. Maharaj was a very pure-hearted, loving person. His love for Srila Prabhupada was seen in his love for the devotees and for people in general, whom he wanted to bring to Srila Prabhupada, and in how he encouraged devotees to increase their engagement, take on more responsibility, and become more loving, humble servants. Maharaj once explained to a devotee in Mauritius, the more responsibility one accepts, the bigger servant of the devotee one becomes. This reminded me of something Srila Prabhupada once said. A disciple came into Prabhupada's room in Mayapur one day and began to complain about the management. Srila Prabhupada said, if you think you can do better, why don't you? Somehow, the disciple came out and announced that Srila Prabhupada had made him the temple commander, and he began to boss around the other devotees. Some devotees complained to Srila Prabhupada that the devotee had said that Prabhupada had made him the temple commander, and that now he was barking orders at everyone. So Srila Prabhupada called for the devotee and instructed him, first you become the servant of everyone, then you become the temple commander. Thus Srila Prabhupada expressed the same idea, that a bigger position means becoming a bigger servant. And Srila Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj in Parampara had the same understanding. If we listen carefully to all of Maharaj's instructions, we can understand how closely he followed the disciplic succession. Some of his statements were very close to Srila Prabhupada's words, and some took the basic principles that Srila Prabhupada gave and sweetened them with personal realization. Another of the many fine qualities exemplified by His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami was his offenselessness. He was very careful not to commit any offense against any devotee or any living entity. And if he felt he had committed an offense, he would immediately try to mitigate the effects by approaching the person, apologizing, and asking forgiveness. Somehow or other, he tried to rectify the offense. From our point of view, we wouldn't think he had committed an offense. But within his pure heart, he may have felt that he had, and immediately he would try to approach and please the person he feared he had offended to remove the effects of the offense. Maharaj's heart was pure and very sensitive, full of appreciation for other devotees and sensitive to his own faults, which again, from our point of view, weren't even faults. And that's really the heart of a Vaishnava, full of love and appreciation for others, but sensitive to one's own deficiencies or mistakes. Bhagavad Gita 12, 13, and 14 reminds me of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj and seems to describe him perfectly. Quote, "One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me." As Maharaj always reminded us, we have the wonderful association of the devotees in ISKCON. And through their association, we can experience Srila Prabhupada's presence. And along with Srila Prabhupada's presence, the presence of Srila Prabhupada's dear and beloved associate, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. And now, especially, we can learn to serve His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj in separation. As Srila Prabhupada wrote in his dedication to Srimad Bhagavatam, quote, "To Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, my spiritual master. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him." End quote. After our Srila Prabhupada left, I looked for solace and guidance in his books, and I came across a section that addressed the disappearance of the spiritual master. Srimad Bhagavatam 4:28, 45 to 55. Some passages encouraged me that my lamentation over Prabhupada's departure was justified. Others, that I could regain his association by serving his instructions. Text 47 states, "Being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears which soaked her breasts and crying very loudly." In his purport, Prabhupada explains, quote, Figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. Thus, when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, his disciple should cry exactly as the queen cries when the king leaves his body. However, the disciple and spiritual master are never separated because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple as long as the disciple follows strictly the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called the association of Vani, words. Physical presence is called Vapu. As long as the spiritual master is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master. And when the spiritual master is no longer physically existing, the disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master. End quote. The next verse discusses the chaos or disorder that might follow the disappearance of the spiritual master. And in his purport, Srila Prabhupada explains what the disciples could do. Quote, the main business of human society is to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times, to become his devotees, to worship the Supreme Lord, and to bow down before him. Yes, the Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles, but when he disappears, things once again become disordered. The perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. I was astonished. Srila Prabhupada was telling me exactly what I needed to know. Quote, the perfect disciples of the Acharya will try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. End quote. But how will the disciples get detailed guidance when there is a question regarding which of the spiritual master's instructions to apply in a particular complex situation? And what would be their qualification to receive such guidance? The purport to text 50 answers, quote, it is the long-standing tradition of the Vedic system that a faithful wife dies along with her husband. This is called Saha Marana. The wife used to enter the fire voluntarily. When Maharaj Pandu died, he was survived by two wives, Madri and Kunti. The question was whether both should die or one should die. After the death of Maharaj Pandu, the wife settled that one should remain and the other should go. Madri would perish with her husband in the fire, and Kunti would remain to take charge of the 5 Pandava children. This indicates that a devotee's wife must be prepared to act in such a way. Similarly, and listen closely, my dear devotees. Similarly, a devoted disciple of the spiritual master would rather die with the spiritual master than fail to execute the spiritual master's mission. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down upon this earth to reestablish the principles of religion, so his representative, the spiritual master, also comes to reestablish religious principles. It is the duty of the disciples to take charge of the mission of the spiritual master and execute it properly. Otherwise, the disciples should decide to die along with the spiritual master. In other words, to execute the will of the spiritual master, the disciple should be prepared to lay down his life and abandon all personal considerations. Then the next two paragraphs, I should say purports, explain how that detailed guidance would come. Quote, in his Paramatma feature, Krishna is the old friend of everyone. According to Vedic injunction, Krishna is sitting with the living entities side by side. According to the Shruti mantra, Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakaya, the Lord is sitting within the heart of every living entity as Surit, the best friend. The Lord is always eager to have the living entity come home, back to Godhead. The Lord is always eager to have the living entity come home, back to Godhead. Sitting with the living entity as witness, the Lord gives him all chances to enjoy himself materially. But when there is an opportunity, the Lord gives good counsel and advises the living entity to abandon trying to become happy through material adjustment and instead turn his face toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrender unto him. When one becomes serious to follow the mission of the spiritual master, his resolution is tantamount to seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As explained before, this means meeting the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the instruction of the spiritual master. This is technically called Vani Seva. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states in his Bhagavad Gita commentary on the verse, Vayasayatmika Buddhir Ekeha Kurunandana, Gita 241, that one should try to serve the words of the spiritual master. The disciple must stick to whatever the spiritual master orders, and simply by following on that line, one sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that unless one is very highly elevated in loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot see him as he is. Nevertheless, if one sticks to the principles enunciated by the spiritual master, somehow or other he is in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Lord is in the heart, he can advise a sincere disciple from within. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Tesham satata yuktanam ajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam enamam ayantite. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. In conclusion, if a disciple is very serious to execute the mission of the spiritual master, he immediately associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by Vani or Vapu. This is the only secret of success in seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead of being eager to see the Lord in some bush of Vrindavan, while at the same time engaging in sense gratification, if one instead sticks to the principle of following the words of the spiritual master, he will see the Supreme Lord without difficulty. Srila Bilvamangal Thakur has therefore said, Bhakti Stvayi Stiratira Bhagavan Yadi Syat Daivena Na Palati Divya Kishora Murti Mukti Swayam Mukuli Tanjalit Sevate San Dharmartha Kama Gataya Samaya Pratiksha. Quote, if I am engaged in devotional service unto you, my dear Lord, then very easily I can perceive your presence everywhere. As far as liberation is concerned, I think that liberation stands at my door with folded hands, waiting to serve me. And all material conveniences of dharma, religiosity, artha, economic development, and kama, sense gratification, stand with her. Krishna Karnamrita 107. If one is very highly advanced in devotional service, he will have no difficulty in seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one engages in the service of the spiritual master, he not only sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but attains liberation. As far as material conveniences are concerned, they automatically come, just as the maidservants of a queen follow the queen wherever they go, wherever she goes. Liberation is no problem for the pure devotee, and all material conveniences are simply awaiting him in all stages of life. I felt purified and exhilarated. I had gotten the guidance, the answers I needed in a most encouraging and empowering way. And I hope that the followers of Sripad Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaja get similar enlightenment and encouragement as they endeavor to serve their departed spiritual master in separation. And I will just add one note from Gauri Das in England. On the departure of His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj shared his feelings, his quote, shattered composure, and his deep questioning of Krishna. The suddenness and the way Tamal Krishna Maharaj tragically passed away perturbed Bhakti Charu Maharaj. He questioned, why did he have to leave us in this way? What came to Maharaj then was a realization, a very important realization, and one that can help us today. Quote, this is Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj's realization. Quote, a realization dawned on me. Our existence in this material world is like a dream. And therefore, how one comes or departs does not really matter at all. Only those who want to remain in ignorance are concerned about how one is born and how one dies. But for a devotee situated in the absolute truth, it does not really matter at all. How one leaves the body is not important. What really matters is how one leads his life. For one who has lived such an intense life of devotion, always expressing his love for Krishna through dedicated service, how can Krishna ever fail him? For one who has always been seeing Krishna in the core of his heart, with eyes anointed with the mascara of love, at the final moment, Krishna comes to him and he sees Krishna face to face. Will he not naturally become submerged in an ocean of bliss? Therefore, how one leaves the body is not important. What really matters is how one develops his love for Krishna. Krishna comes to his devotee at the most crucial time in his life when he is about to leave his body. Srila Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, my dear devotees, I believe that we do have a little more time left. And so if any of you want to ask any questions or make any comments, share any reflections, you can raise your hand, your physical hand or your virtual hand. When my screen is set up, I can't see if anyone does have a question or a comment.
Yes, Maharaj, we checked here.
Well, if there's nothing more, we can conclude now by offering Vaishnava Pranam. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desired trees, who can fulfill the desires of everyone and are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.